a person takes poison, knowing that it can kill him sometime in the future, but stops before it actually kills him, or he dies from some other way, he's still in sin from taking that poison. See, the issue is not whether you die immediately, but by taking something that you know is harmful to you. Tattooing, damaging your body. It's not allowed. Shifting the teeth around in your mouth. This is something dentists should keep in mind, right? Shifting the teeth around in your mouth for cosmetic purposes. This is not allowed. If it is because you don't have a proper bite and it's wearing away your teeth and so for correcting something, it's okay. But if it's just the person comes in and says, I like a space between my two front teeth. I think it looks nicer. No, you're not allowed to do this. It's not allowed. Okay. So certain, acts which involve damaging, harming the body, breast implants, and things like this. This is not permissible.
So chewing tobacco also not...
Chewing tobacco leads to cancer of the tongue, cancer of the throat, cancer of the lip.
And eating chilies and fried meat also should not be taken. That also harms the heart.
No, wait a minute now. Okay?
It produces heart disease.
No. It doesn't produce heart disease in and of itself. You see, make a distinction between halal things which are taken in excess. Okay? Halal things which are taken in excess, they can produce harm. And to take them in excess, knowing they can produce harm, is haram. This is wrong. Because you are acting in a way which will hurt your body. But the substance in and of itself, whether it is, fats or fried foods, etc., these were never harmful to the people of the past. They were harmful to people today. Why? Because one, they eat in excess, because people then ate more moderately. They're eating in excess, and their lives are sedentary lives. They're just sitting in front of the television, couch potatoes, No activity in their life. So when you don't have any activity which breaks down, then these things can become harmful to you. So it is the lifestyle. The doctors will tell you, it is not the food itself which is harmful, it is the lifestyle which then makes that food harmful to you. So the difference between, the halal things can be haram when they're taken to excess. You see, and they can be harmful to us, making it haram when taken to excess. Also, a halal thing for a given individual may be haram. If, for example, you are diabetic, and the doctor instructs you that if you take more than so much sugar, it will cause you to become comatose and you can die from it. For you to take more than that amount becomes haram, because you're taking something that you know can kill you. You follow? So in that circumstance, sugar is halal. So it knowingly, then it is an act of suicide. And suicide in Islam is haram.
Sheikh Bilal, one of the things... Sheikh, there's a few problems that is like unique to our problems in this part of the world, this community. One of the things in terms of marriage treats problems, and it's all of the serious psychological baggage of problems that we bring into our marriages. The serious emotion problems. As a school teacher working with young people, most people have a lot of psychological problems from their childhood, a lot of emotional psychological problems. There are issues, of course, of people, couples marry each other with children, and the problems, the psychological problems, the emotional problems of mind and of some, maybe one of the partners don't really know how to deal with the problem of someone having children. In our community, some other problems, like over the years of misunderstanding among ourselves, what has happened is that the respect level among Muslims is just beginning to rebound. So what you have now is, when you have problems, people are being very reluctant to take it to somebody, because actually, generally speaking, there's very little respect for anybody. So you tend to try to deal with your problems yourself.
Okay, but we need to, let's take it issue by issue and look for solutions, right? You're identifying a series of problems. I won't remember all of these, right? So maybe better to just take one issue and look to see how can we resolve this issue. Take it issue by issue. Okay.
Because it's all one basic solution, okay. I'm just kind of identifying some of the things that people got to deal with. And then, many times, psychological problems that we bring in, lack of respect for each other. Next one is, a lot of brothers have misunderstanding of their role as men within the family, in terms of a man is a man who I read upon, and that's actually abuse. A man is one who abused, and he misinterprets that to mean guidance. Okay, so you have of course, because of these problems, marriage becomes very difficult. Another problem is less but is real in a small society for people that convert to Islam. Okay, reverted. Boredom. Right? Boredom, in that after a couple of weeks or months, young couples don't have any activities in terms of to be involved with. The younger person. Now, the older persons in the community, basically they know certain things, But actually, these problems contribute a lot of problems. But the first two are the major. The baggage that people bring in, which is some serious baggage, all of us, psychological, emotional, and the fact that people basically don't have the kind of respect to go to other people to help them.
Okay, regarding the psychological problems or the baggage that people bring into relationships with them, this isn't something new, right? It's not something peculiar to our times. This is something which has existed since time, as they say, immemorial. That people who come into relationships, depending on their own personal upbringing, they will have certain experiences, etc., which affect their own behavioral patterns, etc., which they're going to bring in with them to the marriage. Of course, it may have been less in the past, especially in Muslim type families, because of the fact that the upbringing was Islamic, more Islamic. So this meant you had dealt with people who were healthier psychologically. They were healthier. So, but of course, no family escapes some things, some errors, etc., which may affect the children and some of their behaviors. But we can say in our time, maybe it is greater. It's much greater because of the fact that we're coming out of non-Muslim, many of us are converts or reverts, whatever, coming out of non-Muslim environment, which had with it many other problems, right? Or from dysfunctional Muslim families, where the people were not practicing, so really we were growing up on our own, So what can we do to minimize the negative effects of these problems in the case of marriage. I would say that probably the best solution for that would be to have some training. For example, people trained in the community in marriage counseling who can, it's not saying you're going to take all the ideas etc. from the West, but they have developed a methodology. We can benefit from their methodology, have Islamic input and from Islamic methodology, put that together and advise couples that people, when they come into Islam, they don't just rush into marriage. This is what sometimes happens to a person, just accepts Islam and brother marries her right away, finish. Or a brother comes into Islam, first thing brother, get married. It may not be the right thing to do. They need to grow in Islam first. People, you should be given a chance to grow in Islam, to understand Islam better, etc., etc. And when marriage is going to be contemplated, then there should be some kind of counseling. Somebody to help to counsel those who are going to be involved in marriage. And this is why there is supposed to be for the woman, a representative, a guardian. In the case of Muslim family, they have a wali. But where there's no Muslim family, no Muslim male who can act within our family in that capacity, then it is somebody who stands in that place. And that purpose of that is also to help to understand this person, give that person guidelines and guidance, and to know the person who is intended, and to give that person advice and so on. That these instruments should be clearly in place. What we're having in many cases are people getting married, and especially in the case of the women, the person who should be there checking that woman out, and the person who's planning to be married is not fulfilling that role. The guardianship aspect for women in marriage is virtually no. I think this is common in many circumstances. So I think by having a body to counsel those who are coming into marriage, to give them advice, and the sisters can deal with the sisters, going into their backgrounds a bit, trying to find out how they grew up, the problems that they face, and to help them to come to grips with their backgrounds and things like this, to help prepare them for marriage. We need some kind of structure like that. Given our thoughts, we can say it's not from the Sunnah. They don't really have this practice of the Sahaba, etc. But these are unique circumstances which didn't exist in those times that they exist today. So the idea of having a body in the community to help other members of the community in case of marriage, etc., is quite legitimate. The other thing which relates to wives and husbands coming into marriages with children is something which people need to know. What are the responsibilities involved? A man marries a woman who has children. It's not his responsibility to maintain and look after those children. They're not his. Technically, according to the law, it is her previous husband's responsibility. Or, if she was married, because the children also may be from, relationship out of wedlock. Now the man, knowing that the father of those children is not going to fulfill those roles, he coming into that situation has to come in knowing that responsibility will fall on him, knowing that he cannot expect what isn't there. So he's marrying that woman, he's marrying the woman and her children. He has a responsibility now, by way of the fact that the society is not providing the support for those children, that he will have to do it. He will have to take that into account. So people need to be educated to what degree are their responsibilities here, and to be clear on it. When you're coming in, this is what's ahead of you. If you don't think you can really deal with these children, then don't go into this relationship. Again, counseling, helping the people know what they're coming into, what is expected of them. In terms of lack of respect of community leaders, this is people having struggled together over a period of time. Bad feelings have developed in the past, which people tend to carry on into the future. This is sad. People are doing it, But ultimately all we can do is just try to encourage people to put these things aside. This is general nasiha or advice which the community has to give to all of its members. We have to put away these feelings, these ill feelings of things of the past. They're usually due to misunderstandings. The people you're dealing with are not evil people. They're people who made mistakes in the past. Maybe they can't see the mistake. Maybe you still see it and they can't accept it as a mistake. Then you have to leave it to Allah. On the day of judgment it will be resolved. In this life we got to put it aside and carry on. As one of the companions narrated that on one occasion he was sitting in a group with the Prophet ﷺ in a masjid, and the Prophet ﷺ announced to the circle that the next person walking into the masjid is among the people of paradise. So all the companions waited to see who was the next one coming in. The next person came in, made his 2 rak'ah, came and sat down with them. MashaAllah, nobody said anything to him, MashaAllah. But the companion who was narrating this incident, he wanted to know why. Why was this person going to be of the people of paradise? So he decided he was going to be, his companion. He just hung with him. Everywhere he went, he would go eat with him, stay over his house, pray. Everywhere he went, he was there with him. After he stuck with him for a week or two, sleeping over his house, he sat with him and he said, well, I've been with you now for this past week or two, and I haven't seen you doing any extra prayers. Okay, you're doing the fard and you're doing the sunnah, few extras here and there, but no special like, tahajjud every night. And no, I'm not seeing you doing this. I don't see you doing any extra special fast. The extras that are generally recommended you do. And he went on through the different things. He said, I can't see anything special. So what is it? So he said, well, he said the only thing that I could say personally that I have tried to maintain in my life, right, is that when I go to sleep at night, I go to sleep without having any ill feeling towards anybody. He goes to sleep with a heart that is, a loving heart at peace with the society. No ill feeling towards anybody. This is something that we need to remember. Because of that, Prophet ﷺ said he is a man of paradise. And we say we want paradise. So we have to be able to put these things aside. We have to put the bad feelings of the past, these things aside, because ultimately it's only hurting us. When we go to bed with these feelings in our hearts, it's only ourselves we're hurting. We're not hurting that person anymore. Ultimately we're hurting ourselves. And with regards also to the issue you mentioned of the roles, the male misconception of what it means to be a man, this again comes back down to education. We need to advise people going into marriage, that these are the images that we've learned out in the society. This is not applicable in Islamic context within marriage. So I think the counseling, for marriage counseling, because once we see there's a problem, that so many breakdowns in marriage, so many problems, etc., then we obviously do need some kind of body to help, advise people who are going into marriage, as well as advise those who are in it, and are finding problems, etc. Or you had to mention something else about boredom. I think that this will be exaggerated when families are not in communication with each other. When the man and woman get married and they isolate themselves from the rest of the community, then the chances of boredom increases. Where the women are in contact with other Muslim women involved in Islamic activities, then similarly the brothers involved in Islamic activities with the other parts of the community, then this is fulfilled. Of course, there needs to be, and I'm sure there are to some degrees, certain community activities, picnics and things like this, and other, I don't know if you're doing it or not, but camps, etc. There are different activities that we should have in the community where the members, are in contact, social contact with each other. This especially becomes important, as you said, because we are living in a non-Islamic society, and much of the ways of entertainment are forbidden to us.
I have two questions. Give one, I think, to Rashida, so I'll take one after him, inshallah. My first question is in relation to, we have a small community. There's a tremendous amount of talk about polygamy. You didn't touch anything of it in the topic, but in your presentation. But however, it's something that brothers love to talk about and smile about it, and sisters seems to, I'm ready for that. They talk about it, or when they talk about it, they sort of saying, they put a different slant to it. Some of them say, well, I live all my life with you, now you want to share what we have with somebody else, and so forth and so on, and the Islamic thing. But just as a small growing community to have this type of talk, right? Maybe you can just give some nasiya, some advice in that direction. And I have another question, but I'll give it to the brother Rashid on the left, and then come back to me, inshallah.
If somebody doesn't ask before you. Regarding polygyny, which is the proper name for it really, because polygamy means either a man having more than one wife or a woman having more than one husband. Actually, this is just a technical point. Huh? Yeah, the proper, a man having more than one wife is called polygyny, and a woman having more than one husband is called polyandry. And both, are together, lumped together and called polygamy. Huh? But we just say in any case, polygamy, everybody knows it's polygamy. But I'm just giving you this technical point. Anyway, the point is that Islam did not ordain polygyny. It did not make it compulsory for Muslims. It recognized a form of marriage among the different forms and approved of it with some limitations. Other forms it forbade. There was polyandry going on there in Arabia at the time. There are a variety of other marriage forms. It rejected most and approved two forms. What we know as the male proposing with dowry from the side of the male with the witnesses, which was a permanent contract of marriage, not temporary marriage, and also the extension where the man may marry more than one. Actually, it is lumped together as one. It's really just one marriage. All of the principles that we spoke about here are applicable to a man with one wife or a man with two wives. The principles of love and compassion and obedience and maintenance, all of this exists with one wife or more than one wife. The only additional factors which come in is that justice must be maintained between the two. So they must be dealt with justly, equally where it is possible, in the case of time, justly where it comes to maintenance, etc., depending on the sizes of the family, etc. And it is something which Allah has ordained and permitted. So the same ruling that we mentioned, that it is not befitting for the believing man or woman, if Allah and His Messenger have decided in a matter, that they have any choice, meaning that we reject polygamy. We don't like it, yes. That a woman may express dislike for it. Islam doesn't say it is sinful for her to dislike it. The wives of the Prophet, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, did not happily welcome in the next wife that came after them. They accepted it in the end. But, you know, if you read the life of the Prophet Prophet's wives, you see that sometimes they plotted and connived trying to, you know, sabotage some of the Prophet's marriages. I mean, this is real. Okay? So, the issue of liking or not liking is not the issue. The issue is that it is permissible where the male is able to maintain more than one family, maintain them justly, fairly. It is permissible. And for the women, if their husbands decide to take that step, Islam doesn't say they cannot discourage, you know, to tell their husband, no, you know, don't do it now, leave it for later, or whatever excuse they want to, you know, put to him. They can discuss it with him, try to discourage him, etc. It's permissible. But in the end, if he decides that he wants to go ahead, then they have to accept it. In the end, this is the bottom line, they have to accept it. Of course, if they feel it becomes so unbearable that they cannot deal with it, and they want a divorce, I mean, this is not recommended, but it is an option that is there for them. It is an option. So, what they have to come to grips with ultimately, what both husbands and wives have to come to grips with, is what is the goal of their marriage. If the goal of the marriage is material security and well-being and comfort, then of course they will not be fulfilling half of their religion with marriage, and likely they will not be pleasing Allah. That marriage will not be the one which Islam has prescribed. It will be a marriage of Muslims and not a Muslim marriage. If, on the other hand, the people involved recognize that the ultimate purpose is to worship Allah, to serve Allah, and that what has been made permissible should be accepted and we can work with, that it's part of the test of this life. The wives of the Prophet, the wives of the companions, may God peace and blessing be on all of them, of the leading scholars, etc. of the past, they adjusted, they accepted, they lived with it, and they were rewarded. That if a woman stays in a polygynous relationship rather than leaves it, and is patient, continuing to fulfill her duty to Allah and contributing to the marriage as she should or as she was doing, that she will be rewarded. She will be rewarded for that patience, for sure.
On that point, Bilal, before I make this decision, this is not, I'm sure this is not the case with every male, okay? But this is my opinion based on my association with Muslim males, and that doesn't fit everybody. This question of polygamy, as you know, a man can marry for whatever reason. He can even marry for the wrong reason. In other words, when I say wrong reason, I mean Allah says in the Qur'an, we should not marry for lust, right?
No. To fulfill a desire, but within the context of marriage, this is not illegitimate. No, Islam doesn't.
All right. But the point I want to make is that over the years, right? Put it this way. But we males in the Bahamas, generally speaking, general statement, are not known for being loving, caring.
Wait a minute, hold on.
I'm finishing with yourself. That's it. You cannot make everybody. I just say to everybody, give me
Okay.
That's respect. And
in my opinion,
English, I said opinion. You understand the word opinion? Do I need to take the dictionary up now? Repeat again, for those who did not hear. I said, this is my opinion. I said again that this does not fit everybody. So I should be able to express myself without being interrupted. Okay, thank you. Let me go on now. The males generally, in my opinion, were not known generally to be loving, caring, doing all the Islamic things and conducting piety, whatever it is, to make the women happy in this community. Right? And the proving, basically, there's been a lot of problems in marriages. We have more than enough problems with marriages for any small community. Right? So the whole question now of polygamy is basically, if men were known and respected and treated their wives according to the Qur'an and Sunnah and doing what is right, we will have less problems and them accepting it. But basically we are not known to that. And some of the brothers who are known as the best brothers that came in March, new brothers wouldn't know this. They were known as soft brothers. And soft means they ain't no real man. Because they ain't hard, right? And so brothers who were real men Islamically would look down upon. I'm saying basically, so it is very natural and easy when we now talk about polygamy, right, that you have a lot of applause. Because first of all, we would expect the women to be satisfied. If women are satisfied, they can say, well, yes, I'm taking care of Islamically, you'll make me happy. Right? Basically. And you have some women who don't want to share their husbands with anybody because it's the personal reason. But I'm saying, and I maintain that, I'm not saying everybody. There's some brothers who kept coming to marriage and look like they're on a good foot, inshallah. But basically, marriage is being very negative, generally in the Bahamas, it's very negative. And that's my opinion.
Well, I would say that those people who would actually engage in polygamy would be no more than a small segment of the community anyway. I mean, even in the societies where people have the means, in large numbers, like Saudi Arabia and others, still the numbers of those who are practicing polygyny is 10-15%, maximum 20%. So it's going to be a minority, a small group in the community. Now, the desire on the part of men to practice polygyny is normal. Whether you want to identify it as being their lack of care for their existing spouses or whatever, these factors, I mean, the fact is that it is natural to the vast majority of men. Allah has put that as a part of their makeup. And it is got biological, psychological, sociological, reasons for its existence. So this is a part of the nature. Now, the Islam invites us to marriage within certain bounds with checks and guidelines, etc. And as long as the community strives to maintain those, then those who will actually practice polygyny will be few. So it's really not something that deserves a lot of argument about, because no one can say it's not permissible here in the Bahamas because Bahamian males are this way or that way. No one can say that. Allah has made it permissible, it is permissible. If one fulfills the requirements, it's permissible. And it will be a test for that individual, no matter how good his first marriage is, and everything is tight, and everything is fine, and his wife even agrees. And he takes a second wife. You can find that, after some time, then the second wife may change. Or the first wife may change. The attitudes and so on. It's a test. Just as when a man marries his first wife. And before they got married, they may have been discussed and everything seems fine and perfect and all okay. After they get married, they start to live together and they start to find things coming up. I don't like the way he leaves his toothpaste. He doesn't put the cap back on. And little things that can become big issues. I mean, this is human beings. So we can have that, with one situation. You can have it with, doubles up with two, and triples up with three, and so on. So, I mean, a person going into this type of situation obviously has to know that, they're taking on, the good with the bad. The negative aspects are going to come along with it too. And the most important thing is for the community to understand what constitutes marriage, what the relationships should be, what the obligations are, and work on it. We're not perfect, and as I said, even in the time of Prophet Muhammad, where he was that loving, caring, compassionate husband, his wives didn't like him to have more than one, or more than them. So, nature.
Okay, I was about to forego my question because the brother basically touched on it a little bit. But I want to go back to something you said earlier as far as when the husband eats, he feeds his wife, and when he clothes himself, he clothes his wife. How does this tie into my second wife, my third wife, and my fourth wife? Can you break that down for me a little bit?
Actually, it's not when he eats, he feeds his wife. Meaning, it means that he feeds her from what he eats. Meaning he doesn't, buy steak for himself and he gives her, fish. Right? If he eats good quality stuff, she should eat the good thing on the same standard as himself. If he clothes himself, from, civil robe, then she's got to have of equivalent standard. That's the principle. So now, if he has two wives, as he takes care of himself, he has to maintain a similar standard for both of his wives in terms of what they eat as well as what they wear. Is that clear?
Yeah, housing and everything.
Yeah. He can't, put the first wife in a palace and the second wife in a shack. No. If he has either he has to sell his palace and get a mediocre, two houses for both, or he has to build another palace.
Any questions on the sisters?
You got one right there, right?
Oh, is that coming or is it?
In the instance where a woman marries a man who is adopted by non-Muslims and he converted to Islam, can she uncover in front of the parents of the adopted son? No. Because adoption doesn't, especially you're dealing with non-Muslims anyway, right? But let's say it was adopted by Muslim parents, because this is the thing even more, significant. Because in front of non-Muslims, it becomes even, in front of Muslims it becomes even more evident. The point is that adoption is allowed in Islam as long as you don't change the name of the child, meaning you're raising a child in your home. Okay? If the child is brought into the home before the age of 2, and they're still breastfeeding, and the mother breastfeeds that child, then the child now enters into the home circumstance like one of the children. The girls will not have to cover before him, he cannot marry them. But if he comes in after that point, or she doesn't breastfeed him, then the girls will have to cover before him once he reaches puberty. Once they reach puberty, he reaches puberty, and he can still marry them. So when a woman marries an adopted son, then the father of that adopted son technically can still marry her. She divorced him, she can marry that father. If he was a blood father, then she couldn't. Or if he had been adopted by way of breastfeeding, then she could never marry his father, his adopted father. Second question, is it true that a man who wants to marry a woman is allowed to see her without her hijab? Yes, this is correct. No, without her hijab, no, which includes seeing a part of her arm, part of her feet, you know? Yes. There's evidence for it found from the practice of the Sahaba. I'm just clarifying.
I just asked, I just qualifying, like, once you say part of the feet
up to her knees. This is if she agrees. Okay. If she has no objection, yes. If she objects, if she doesn't want to remove her hijab, show you her hair, then you have to either come with it, accept her as she is, as is, or you decide, well, no, I have to see her hair. If not, I'm not going to marry.
Okay, seriously, I joking play with you, but this is known.
Yes. It's not in practice in the mass of the Muslim world today.
Do they know it?
But it's in law. Yeah.
You mean like say that?
You could request that.
But to be honest with you, in most Muslim societies, they don't know it.
Okay.
Some societies they do. Like in Sudan, for example, if you're getting married, if you've made your proposal, you go to the home of the parents, then the daughter will come out wearing a dress to her knees, her short sleeve, so you can see her arms, without any covering her hair, and she will, serve the.
She's already. But she's already.
Where a proposal has been made, marriage is not taking place. A proposal has been made. Once proposal has been made, then it's permitted for him to see that person. In the Sudan, yes. And there may be other cultures like that where they have, but in most of the Muslim world,
they don't know this.
They don't. It's there in the books. If you go back in the books, but it's no longer practiced today.
The average Muslim know this.
No, the average Muslim doesn't know it. It's in the law books. Of all of the schools of Islamic law, it's there. But it's not known in practice in most of the Muslim world today. If I may, I would like to add something. Polygyny that is not spoken often. But first, if you look at what a monogamous situation is about, for etc. problems, because what happens when he takes a second wife, it is projected onto the second wife, so as having to be the cause of the problems that was already existing before polygyny. Yes, this is I guess what the person trying to say, that oftentimes when a person takes a second wife, the biggest problems, I'll just add this to, which will come into that relationship, may not be problems which existed even with the first wife. Sometimes there are problems already existing with the first wife, and they may be, exaggerated with the taking of a second wife, and then the outer community tends to look at the second wife as being the cause, right? This is true. But there is another point that I'd like to raise, and of course we have to keep that in mind too. We shouldn't assume because problems have arisen that it is the cause of the second wife and looking from the outside. But what I would like to raise also is that in most cases, the biggest problems which come when polygyny takes place properly, not when the brother marries somebody and nobody knows about it and the wife finds out when he brings her home. Not those kind of circumstances, right? Where, he has informed her, she's aware of it, she may not like it, but she's accepted it, and they marry, so. The biggest problem tends to come from the women of the community. They feel they must now run to this sister and tell her, you poor soul, the first wife, what he has done to you, why he did this to you, and they go on. And then the sister who was taking it okay, she starts to feel, well, yeah, poor me, why did he do this to me? And they become the source of the problem, really. So this is one thing that, those sisters who find themselves in the situation should be aware that, they have to be careful not to allow the women around in the community to then create problems for them in their relationship. And similarly, the women in the community, they should, be also careful that they don't, become the cause of these problems. Because of the fact that her husband took a second wife, it doesn't mean that, she's now in this terrible state and so on and so on and so on. If she comes to you, feeling down and so whatever, then you don't go say, oh, you poor thing, he shouldn't have done this to you. No. Instead you tell her, you should encourage her, be patient, inshallah, Allah will reward you. He's a good brother, he'll take care of you, he's not going to neglect you. So, you should give her words of encouragement to strengthen her, rather than to make her weaker. This is a big, I think a very major point that we need to keep in mind in these circumstances.
I have a question.
Yes, brother. You made mention a bit earlier about the reasoning for marriage. I mean, the first off reason, is that you worship, so that you won't get into anything else other than that your wife or your husband supposed to be help to you in worship. With that in mind, is there anything or is there any books available now that I can read or give the people that I know about that? Because that wasn't the first thing that I got when I was in Islam. That wasn't the first
understanding?
Yeah, understanding that I got. So is there anything like any books that are out now that you recommend that basically clarifying that topic first, dealing with that first, that understanding first?
Well, I really don't know of any particular book that has focused on this, stressed it. In the book which I co-authored, known as Polygamy in Islam, there is reference to that there. But as a book in terms of just dealing with marriage per se, stressing that aspect, I don't know of any specifically.
Just coming on to my second question. This is in relation to the shadow question. This is in relation to, it seems like a carryover that, I know in the marriage life of some non-Muslims, where there's some deep problems within their marriages, they live a lifestyle of, I call it the quiet zone within the home, where despite the fact that they have these major differences, they decide not to separate because, for social status, for so this reason or that reason, and so forth and so on. I find that this thing also carries on into some of the Muslim family too. Now, when this happens in a Muslim family, what sort of advice, what sort of attitude one can give to that family? Should the husband take a more positive approach? Look, we can't make it together, forget about social status, let's break up the relationship. Doesn't matter, with our family or with our children, so let's get a clear position so we can't live this life of misery. Or do we live a life of, let's make it look good to everybody, but we're not going to sleep together, we're not going to live together, but we just need to be together. So I just want some advice on those kind of circumstances happening within the Muslim environment.
If parents choose this option, that they will just continue the marriage for the sake of the children, or because of the negative impact that divorce has on the community, this is an option that they have the right to take. We can't say to them, oh no, you should get divorced. No. Of course, where the circumstance is affecting their being, and this is when we say to them, you should get divorced. But if that negative environment is making them weaker and lesser Muslims, their faith is being weakened, they're neglecting responsibilities, etc., in such circumstance, it is better for them, we should advise them, listen, it is better that you all separate. But where they're maintaining you know, they're whatever they've decided, they would just prefer to continue like that. You know, they're comfortable with it. You know, they're still able to handle their Islamic responsibilities in the community. You know, but not really aware of what is happening internally, and they want to keep it that way. Then, you know, that is their option.
Please, let me continue with that. That's an excellent question. Because before, I just put my hand in 4 or 5 without excellence. And I would suggest the community where the couple agree to a mutual divorce, a mutual settlement, a mutual everything. You don't need people calling the house and stirring up that he's going to Africa, right? And stirring up the house. Because everything is mutual. Because I mentioned that to somebody before. It is mutual. You don't need to say anything. You don't need to get involved. Everything is mutual. It is for the pleasure of Allah. The children are okay. They agree it is mutual. Now keep out. Thank you.
Two questions I have really. The first one really is deals with something you said earlier, where the dowry has been set. You mentioned in the Gulf that they used to have the dowry so high, people can get married. And now they've lowered it to a level, and it's straightforward board. And what I wonder is that permissible in light of the hadith of the Roman question Omar, when he tried to do that, to set a limit on the dowry, and she questioned him on it, and she called him on it, and he agreed that he was correct, because he quoted from the Qur'an, told us, that he sort of like didn't set any limits on it. That's one thing. Then the other question that I want to raise is among the requirements or the reasons why people get married. You mentioned about the genealogy. I think that when couples are planning on getting married, normally in terms of the family background that was looked at, there are certain genetic traits that you may need to know about. For example, if individuals in the family may have the traits of sickle cell anemia, okay? This is something that should be known, and they should be advised accordingly. That if they have the traits, there's a possibility that it can be passed on to their children, and children get a lot of the disease.
Well, I think the second point was a comment, and I agree, that where there are biological problems in the background of the individuals involved, this should be known, and people getting married should be informed of these possibilities, so people going into the relationship know what can possibly come out of it biologically. The first part, the question, this represents, really, as I said, an agreement made within a few tribes, right? That they have agreed to set this limit, as a standard amongst themselves, right? Before they had because it is acceptable in Sharia that the dowry be what is commonly accepted in a particular region. It's perfectly okay. If a woman wants to go beyond it, that's her individual right. What happens is that mostly it is done according to the custom of the community, and that is acceptable. It's not forced on her, meaning that she doesn't have any option. You understand what I'm saying? But to go according to the norm of that particular community is also acceptable. They have a principle they call mahar al-misl in Sharia, that if, for example, a person married somebody and they didn't set a dowry, right? Those should be done, but it wasn't set, and then the man died, right? Means her dowry was not stipulated, but it is her right, and it should be calculated even before you start to divide up the man's inheritance. So how do they calculate it? They go to this principle of mahar al-misl. So they look to meaning the dowry of people of her similar status, other people who belong to her tribe. What is the norm that the people get? in dowry? What is the norm that is given? And then they give that to her. So the idea of having a norm is not against the Sharia. You know, it is not limiting, it's just this is what parents have agreed upon, right? And they would encourage their daughters to stay within this, you know, because usually the daughters didn't care. It's the parents, you know, who's saying, no, I won't accept, you know, my daughter to be married for less than this or less than that. So they're saying, they're agreed now to, okay, listen, we're not going to put those stipulations anymore. We'll go at this number. You know? But if the daughter prefers more, this is her right to request more.
You prefer less?
Okay. And if she prefers less, that is also her right. Okay, wait. I think, you know, there may be some other people before we run, because see a few brothers are sort of monopolizing the questions, right?
No,
are there some other brothers here? Some other brothers who, you know, haven't said a word? I mean, there are no questions on your minds, brothers? Huh? You don't have any questions? You guys? No? Brothers? You don't have a question? No? Brothers? I just want to make sure, because sometimes, you know, brothers who are very enthusiastic, they may just, you know, monopolize and not get others a chance. Okay? Alhamdulillah.
Yes, Brother Bilal, could you explain to me a little bit more about destiny? Or you guys, I think you may mention earlier about destiny. Could you explain that more to me?
Well, I think before we go into that, let's see if there are any more questions on marriage, right? We'll finish the things related to family relations and marriage, and then as a closing question, perhaps we can, you know, look at the issue of destiny.
You had mentioned earlier, Brother Shah mentioned too about family backgrounds and this stuff. I'm not going to go into a general thing like the other brother. I'm personally giving it myself. Right? You can get into a situation like myself. It was after me. My family background, right? To me, my family is non-Muslim. I am a Muslim. I am trying to please Allah. If you're going to marry a brother based on his family background, especially a brother that is converted to Islam, that brother may never get married because his family is a non-Muslim. Please, you know, break that down. Like the brother said, break it down to that point.
As I said, looking at a person's family background is legitimate. I'm not saying that, you know, that is the deciding factor, but it is legitimate for a father in discussing with this person, seeing what kind of family he came from, even though they may be non-Muslims. Even though they may be non-Muslims. I mean, if they were, you know, a clan of drug dealers, you know, or they were, you know, respectable church-going folk who were known in the community, you know, with upstanding members of the community, that makes a difference. It doesn't necessarily mean that that person is going to be a drug dealer or that person is going to be upstanding, of course. It's not absolute. But it is something that can be given some consideration, right? That if, for example, in talking with a brother, I find from his expressions and his ideas something which seems to relate back to that drug dealing clan, then that may make me reluctant to marry him to my daughter, because some of that upbringing may still be affecting that individual, and I wouldn't want my daughter to go into that situation. You see? By understanding the background, it helps me to understand